Do people actually care about VTuber lore? Let's talk about it. Well, just like with a lot of things, it depends on the person you're talking to. For example, a lot of people fall in love with creating lore on a specific character. A really great response in my Twitter thread that I'm about to show later described it as creating a D&D character. Now, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. However, I do know that a lot of people go all in creating their lore and creating their personality and kind of stepping away from reality to be able to live out a fantasy or an alter ego. But alongside creating interesting stories for their fictional characters, there are also people who love consuming it. And of course, they find the lore fascinating because it makes it easier to understand a character and seeing where they come from. And the VTubing space is no exception to this. It's filled with interesting characters, interesting VTubers, and a whole bunch of rich lore. And there's no doubt in my mind that VTubers also love creating lore because it makes it easier to depict their emotions and of course to be able to express their personality in an artistic way. Hololive is probably the best example as to how to use lore to their advantage. The amount of memes, jokes, animations, etc. that their community uses to be able to make all sorts of different fan projects. Like that fan animation of Gura and Detective Amelia. The animation was really good and it used the specific VTuber's lore perfectly. Amelia being a detective, Gura being a fish out of water or a shark out of water, I guess, to tell a pretty cool story. So we know that in the VTuber space, in terms of like the actual VTubers themselves, they like lore, obviously. And that's great and all. However, I want to know from the perspective of the viewers. What do they think? Do they care? Are they invested in it? Do they want to continue seeing it? Or do they just want to find a new streamer that is fun to watch and it looks nice? Well, I was interested and I made a Twitter thread asking people who watch VTubers what their thoughts on this is. Now, this Twitter thread is filled with not only viewers, but VTubers themselves. And I'm going to be looking as much of these as I can, but obviously there's a lot of responses. If you guys do want to take a look at the tweet and see all people's responses, I'll link it in the description. However, I'll be looking at the most interesting ones. And if you're interested in my opinion on this topic, I'll be sharing it right after we go through this thread. I have a specific opinion on VTuber lore, and I think that I would like to share it. But first, let's see what other people think, huh? Roy Chiato, my boy, what does he say? Lore is more fun than a necessity. Sometimes it's cool to see what the thought process was for a character or a setting, especially if they drastically change their appearance. But for new VTubers, 100% unnecessary. It's more of a treat for you and your community to enjoy. That's actually a point that I never really thought of, is the fact that they do use lore to be able to change their appearance. Let's say that a specific VTuber likes to have a certain look, and then about a couple months later, half a year later, they're like, I want to switch it up completely. I want to look completely different. So they think of a lore reason to be able to compensate for that drastic change look. Change look? Look change, or what am I even talking about, dude? ESL problems, Jesus. Now, obviously, this is from the perspective of a VTuber, but that is a new perspective that I wasn't really thinking about before, and it makes total sense to me. But the biggest thing to take away from this is that it's obviously just fun more than anything else. It's not a necessity. Nothing's really a necessity other than breathing, eating, and farting. Don't add that. Don't add that. Don't add that. I like lore because it adds a whole layer of fun and creativity to fan art and discussion, whether it's drawing based on their powers or tier lists dedicated to power scaling, lol. I'm gonna bring this up again, but absolutely Hololive is killing it in this department. If you guys have gone to the Hololive subreddit, it's filled with things like this. Drawings based on their powers and tier lists. Callie being in the underworld depicted as a Grim Reaper, obviously. Fauna being like Mother Nature, obviously. Gura being like the Queen of Atlantis and stuff like that. A lot of fan art comes from this type of stuff, and that makes sense. For artists, that must be a gold mine because they get more inspiration to be able to draw something cool if the VTuber has lore. And don't even get me started on the power scaling tier list, because there's plenty of those and they're really funny. Sometimes I see some that are like ultra powerful apex predator tiers, and then you have like Achan, who's able to rein in all these mythic beings, you know? Achan is the manager, but I'm sure you all knew that. So from an artist and from a viewer perspective, it is pretty fun to be able to do cool things like this. But I'll be honest with you, Hololive is really the only one that I see this being super prevalent. Of course, other communities and other agencies have this too, but Hololive is the one that I'm mostly in, and I usually see it most there. I generally like it. Hot take incoming though. I feel like when Council debuted, I felt like they chose to lean into the lore a little too much during their first 6 months and it really put me off of them. They seem to have dropped that, and it's for the better. This comment is an interesting one because I'll be completely honest, I generally feel like this is more common than people would think. Well, a lot of people really like the lore. Some people can lean the other way, but I think a lot of people are pretty silent on it. They just let the VTuber do their lore thing, and then it's back to your regularly scheduled broadcast of playing Minecraft or something. Lore can be kind of cool for the debut. After the debut, it's usually pointless unless the VTuber puts effort to keep it relevant. This is something that I see that, like I said, to kind of piggyback off of my last point, is more common that you realize. It's usually like a one-time thing, or maybe they bring it up when they re-debut with another lore. Actually, with Roy from the earlier comment, he's like a coffee VTuber that has, you know, like a bar and stuff like that. So he has like coffee time or something. I've seen some VTubers have like tea times because their VTuber loves tea or something like that. They incorporate their lore into their content. Takahata, that's another one that's a great one because he's a bartender and his content is all about people coming into the bar and having a good time. Stuff like that is really good, but I feel like those are exceptions, and the majority of them, actually I shouldn't really say the majority, it's pretty 50-50. After their debut, they usually just play games and they enjoy their time on stream with the chat, and they make content and funny things and entertaining things like that. So this is an interesting comment for sure. VTuber lore is not really necessary though. I do love watching VTuber lore myself. I enjoy it a lot. So kind of as I was mentioning before, completely a different side to what we saw just barely. But yeah, this person really likes VTuber lore compared to the other one. Oh boy, we got some more. Personally, I feel like the lore is superfluous. Like, unless the VTuber is going to be continuously enacting upon or expanding that lore, though some sort of on-stream story arc telling, I don't see a point to it. It's cool, sure, but I don't see the point of it. Now, I don't know if I would go as far to say that it's pointless, because like I was mentioning before, it's a great way to be able to introduce to the masses. Also, kind of knowing where they came from is also kind of a nice thing. Like, for example, let's say that they got isekai'd, or you know what, let's even go a little bit further.
They're safe.
And they're actually an angel that wanted to do cool shit, and the angels wouldn't let them. So to be able to do cool shit, she went to hell and she took over hell, became Satan. And now she's just here playing video games, and that's why she likes video games and can't really go anywhere, because she's in hell. She rules hell. And that's all she wants to do is just play video games and have fun with people. So I think introducing a specific character is really cool and stuff like that. And I don't think it's superfluous in that case. Afterwards, I can see people just not caring about lore. Introducing somebody, I feel like, is where it really excels. But I get people not really caring about lore at all. They just want to see a VTuber that's pretty or that's cool and entertaining, and they just want to see them play video games. I can see that. I'm pretty neutral on them, although it's always cooler when VTuber lore gets updated to include their community and inside jokes, as well as involving other people, like how some corpo have done. Big example is how fans interpreted Hollow Myth with insane animations and the Ame-verse. That's actually a really good point. I really do enjoy it when VTuber lore gets updated to include inside jokes and community jokes. That's probably my favorite version of VTuber lore. Not when some intricate backstory gets involved, but when community-driven jokes get incorporated in. Like, for example, Yago being best girl. That is in a lot of the different Hololive VTubers lore, because Yago is best girl and that's how it is. The community created that, and a lot of the VTubers have endorsed it. When the lore gets written by their community, I think I enjoy that much more than regular lore building. But that's just me personally. I don't care if it isn't there, but I love when a VTuber really gets into their own lore and has fun with it. I think Narissa is a good example. I haven't really gotten into Narissa's own lore, but I do know about the Jailbirds, and of course about Narissa being like an incredible singer and stuff, but I'm not like super deep into the lore. I'm one of the people that lean more into the streamer rather than the lore, but I'll get into that later. However, good point. When VTubers get into their lore, they have fun with it, and usually when they have fun with it, they're a lot more fun to watch. Being happy is contagious, you know? I am a fiend for world building. I love lore and hearing about it. It being fun able to theory craft based on the lore that's been revealed. It's a ton of fun for me. Lore Andy. That is literally the definition of a lore Andy. They love to theory craft, they like to lore build, and hopefully one day we'll have a VOD channel or some sort of a VTuber lore channel that kind of ties everything together in a nice video. That's not gonna be me, I promise you that. It's fun for a bit, but streams and interactions between fans and the streamer will turn lore upside down anyway, which is the more fun part of it. Oh, I like that. I like that because it's true. Kiara's supposed to be a phoenix and everyone calls her a chicken. The community gets to dictate the lore at the end of the day, which in my opinion is the most fun part of it. I agree. Subaru being a very cute tomboy that loves baseball, all of a sudden did an ASMR stream and now she's a duck. And guess what? She's fully embraced the duck. She is the living, breathing, like thing of a duck, you know? Pippa is a pink rabbit. A lot of people know her for being Walmart Pecora or a laughing seagull. Take your pick. Like, it's like one or the other. Bow! She's supposed to be a whale that sings beautifully. Actually, I think she wrote her own lore. I think she made herself a furry, and I think she made herself like pregnant or something. I don't know. But the fact that the community gets to shape the lore, even though you introduce something to them, let's say you give them a piece of putty. It's like, this is my lore. And then they go, and now that is your lore. I like that comment. Good comment. It's fun for the debut. It's fun if it comes up every now and then, but trying to stick too much to the lore could be stressful, and we don't want that. Being able to create continuity in VTuber lore can be a little weird, and that's why I think lore is kind of like a very secondary, even thirdly, how do you even say that? Like a secondary problem to a lot of people's whole brand, because yeah, it can be pretty stressful to make sure everything kind of lines up perfectly, and that's just how it is. I think I'm in the minority, but I think lore is silly and just ignore it. I can understand how people find it fun, especially if they're still in the Chuny days. It can lead to some fun memes though. Very true. Yeah, a lot of people think this way, to be honest. I don't think you're in the minority at all. It's kind of a fun additive, but I kind of dislike when someone announces a lore video. It kind of ruins the lore if you talk about it like that. If it's lore, interact with it in character or it feels weird. Maybe it's just me, but it bothers me and I won't care about it as much. I think getting into the details of how someone portrays their own lore is a little bit, and you're getting too lost into it. People are able to express their own lore in whatever the way they want. And if it doesn't land for you, that's just the way it is. But you're not wrong for thinking this either. But every plug has a socket, and unfortunately your plug does not fit in that socket. I honestly don't care. I just want to see how good of a person they are while they are funny. I personally think this is the majority, but we'll get into that later. I subscribe to the John Carmack theory on lore story. Story in games entertainment is like a story in a porn movie. Okay. It's expected to be there, but it's not that important. Yeah. Okay. That was a comment. To be honest with you, I kind of agree. I don't even know who John Carmack is, but sure. Oh shit, iTunes like, guys talk about porn? I guess, yeah, VTuber lore is like a porn movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not that important. Okay. What an analogy. So a lot of different opinions. People like it, people don't like it, people don't care. But, you know, let's keep answering this question of do people actually care about VTuber lore? And I think I'm going to bring in or rein in my 2 cents. And I'll be completely honest with you. When I say people don't, or do people care? It's not necessarily mean like if they don't care, that doesn't mean that they don't like it. It's just that it's not a thing that they're looking for. So in my personal opinion, I don't think people really care about VTuber lore that much. And I think what's to blame for that is the type of content that they're creating as a VTuber, streaming. Whenever they see streamers, they want to see a good personality. They want to see somebody funny or somebody entertaining, somebody new, somebody educational, somebody that can make them feel good, somebody that's rotund in certain areas. And I see a lot of comments saying, oh, I'm in the minority, or, oh, this is a hot take, or people are not gonna like me for when I say this. When I personally, I feel like they're the majority of people watching VTubers. They're not really looking for an intricate lore type of thing with VTubers. And frankly, I'm not either. But it's all part of the content creation game. If you're making an intricate lore or introducing something that requires some form of lore, don't let that stop you from doing it. But as a viewer, they're mostly looking for something entertaining, and lore can be entertaining. Like for me, I'm mostly looking for somebody that's funny, somebody that makes moments, somebody that makes jokes and memes. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. I think a lot of people mix lore and joke and memes because ultimately that is their lore. You could definitely narrow this down to what is lore? Is lore a story? Is lore something that you create prior to it being made? Well, that's a quote, huh? Is a story something you create prior to it being made? What a quote. I'm going to put that right up there with Jaden Smith's Mirrors quote. And I personally think that people care about lore depending on what you define lore as. For example, Bao being impregnated by a wolfman from Elden Ring while she cooks in a kitchen in front of thousands of people.
I want Blythe to breed me.
That's lore. Did you like it when Corone streamed for almost 24 hours trying to beat Kirby for the N64? That's lore. And I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but truly, like, think about it. One of my favorite pieces of Zentreya lore is when she evolved into a gecko. And the gecko was able to get into many different outfits, like a maid outfit or a Zentreya outfit. Yes, the gecko was able to make a Zentreya cyborg or an android or a mecha, whatever you want to call it, and operate it from within. And when she decides to come out of the Zentreya mecha, she's there in all her glory. Gecko Zentreya.
Fight me.
That's my favorite piece of Zentreya lore. So I do think people care about VTuber lore. But if you truly want me to answer without being a cop-out, I don't think people care about traditional lore. You don't need to write an interesting or intricate world building. I think for the most part, people want to feel like they belong in a community and they want to see you make entertaining content. They're watching you to be able to see something that they possibly have never seen before. And that keeps them coming back. Funny moments, entertaining events, interactivity. That's what they truly care about. And that's why you primarily see a lot of VTubers do their debuts, introduce themselves with a little bit of lore, and then never really truly expand upon it beyond that. It's a very minuscule thing in a big project. And ultimately, I think the streaming lore is far more interesting than any lore that anybody could create. And that's not a insult to anybody that likes creating stories, because that's really cool too. And if you like doing that, keep doing that. Who knows? You could make a VTuber world or a VTuber story that is so interesting and so interactive, and you can mix all these different elements at once that a lot of people get sucked into it and be like, all right, what's the next chapter gonna be about? Right now, I don't think there's anybody like that. And there was a comment that said it before, but a lot of the VTubers don't really lean into lore that much, because over time, when it comes to content creation, it gets really tiring to live up to a specific lore or a character. That's why a lot of people shape their personas to be very similar to their IRL personas while still having some form of escapism. And also because they might find it fascinating to be a cockroach with ginormous booba. But anyways, that's my take on VTuber lore. And I think I like my take on VTuber lore. I'm gonna stick with it. I like the lore that gets made rather than created. I don't even know what that means anymore, but it makes sense to me. Like, come on, do you think Corone could create a story where she got spooked by soap? Nah, it was just made like that. That's how it is. Hopefully you guys can leave a comment to see what your thoughts are, but let me know what you think of VTuber lore. I need to put on some Aquaphor. My lips are dry. Put that in my next book, huh? My YouTuber lore, Dry Lips McGee. Anyways, that's about it. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.